With his own diary tapes and other unique recordings, Tony Benn recalls the general election campaign of 1992.
The 1992 general election was the 16th that I had fought as a parliamentary candidate, and I was passionately keen that Labour would win. At the beginning of every campaign, the Shadow Cabinet and the National Executive meet to agree the manifesto, and it is at that moment that the national campaign is launched. At that meeting, I moved 6 amendments, all of which were defeated, and Dennis Skinner and I, at the end, decided we could not support the manifesto and voted against it, a thing I'd never done before. Monday, the 16th of March, 1992. I went to the House and then went over to the Institute of Mechanical Engineers for the manifesto meeting, the Clause 5 meeting, which had been specially arranged there to avoid having to use Transport House, which would have shown too close a link with the trade unions. And the whole document was put, and Dennis and I voted against it. There were a great deal of disapproval when we did, and I wondered whether it was wise and sensible, but you have a proposal and you vote on it. And that's it. I shall argue for the manifesto, put it forward with as much conviction as I can. But, it can't be wrong to cast a vote. But still, I don't want to be the guy who gets the blame for losing the election, which I'm sure they would try. So then we were told that Neil was going to make a winding-up speech, but I was so late I slipped out. And of course, all the journalists were there, and they saw me walking out. I think they thought I had walked out, but I had a meeting. The election has produced excitement, and the truth is the ideologically interested socialists are discouraged. The party members are excited, the public are more interested, and although the polls tonight put the Tories, the Harris poll puts the Tories 3 points ahead, which I don't actually believe, my feeling is that the Labour campaign has got off to a really solid start. I came home and packed up the stuff ready to go to Chesterfield, and it's now nearly midnight. Despite my reservations about the manifesto, I had to present it and wanted to present it in the most favourable light in my own constituency. And of course the real campaign is fought in the constituencies. That's where the meetings are held and the pollsters and the pundits are set on one side. In any campaign, morale is all important, not just to get the case across, but to see that those who are working with you feel that they can win. And I did a lot of meetings for my friends who were standing in other constituencies, including Alice Mann, the candidate for Halifax. Sunday, March the 29th. Clocks went back, so I got an hour's less sleep. I drove to Halifax. It took me about an hour and a half. And I went along the motorway and found it. Actually, when I got to Halifax, I couldn't find the Labour headquarters, and I turned, thinking I was in the right place, and a police car pulled up behind me. And I opened the window, and an inspector with 2 pips on his shoulder said, "Don't tell me you didn't see the notice." So I said, "It's worse than that, I'm lost." So he said, "Where are you going?" So I said, "I'm going to the Labour headquarters at West Street." "Follow me," he said. So he drove me to the Labour headquarters. Then he said, "I've never, in the whole of my life in the police, ever met a famous person before. Could I have your autograph?" So I gave him my autograph. And then went to the Harrison Hall, which is a really old hall with bare benches, just a wooden seat and a wooden back, shaped like a lecture theatre. And I must say it was tremendously good fun. It was lovely. It was a revival meeting. I think almost everybody there was Labour, except for a few SWP people. And it was a great success and gave me a boost, and obviously I gave them a boost.
I think it's more important that we should concentrate on what we are going to do with Britain. Because I tell you, the day we decide we want a society where everyone's got useful work, everyone's got a home, everyone's got lifelong education, everyone's got good health, everyone enjoys dignity in old age, that day we decide it, it will happen. Because when people do decide that, there's no power on earth that can stop it taking place. Good luck. Thank you very much. When I drove back to Chesterfield again, it took me about an hour and a half. When I got back, had a bit of laundry to do. And then at 8 o'clock, I went down to St. Thomas's Church, Brampton. And the church was absolutely packed. And Christopher Frith was the rector. And he chaired the meeting. And there were 3 microphones. And Peter Lewis, the Tory candidate, and
and Tony Rogers, the Liberal candidate, and myself, and each microphone had a blue, yellow, or red flex on it. It was quite amusing, really. And we were given a couple of minutes to say something, and then we had questions. There were massive subjects, and I didn't think I did brilliantly well, judging by the reaction of the audience, but then I think it was largely a Tory audience. Anyway, it was certainly worth doing, and I drew attention to the fact that we had a marvellous discussion without the help of Robin Day, and they laughed.
The mass media have an enormous influence on people's thinking, but one way of getting round it is to meet as many people as you can personally. And on one occasion, this came home very forcibly.
Tuesday, March the 31st, 1992. Today, the Sun had its headline, Ben threat. Reds move into number 10, and it caused a slight flicker of anxiety, but I knew it wouldn't be too bad, and nobody rang about it at all. And I went to Old Whittington with Kevin Taylor to the new Whittington Club, Miners' Welfare, and I talked there for a bit to a few people, and then on to the Bull's Mouth. And the interesting thing about the Bull's Mouth was this, that I was talking to a man who's a French polisher, and up came a very smartly dressed gentleman, and I was introduced to him. I introduced myself. I said, I'm the candidate. He said, are you a councillor? He said. So I said, no, I'm the Labour candidate. Who are you then? I said, I'm Tony Benn. Oh, he said, I'm a Conservative. I've always been a Conservative. So I said, what have you done in your life? He said, I was Colonel of the Royal Engineers. So I said, when did you join the Army? Oh, I joined in 1947, when you were still at school. So I said, half a minute. I said, I was commissioned as an RAF pilot in 1945, having joined the Air Force 42. He said, I don't believe it. I didn't know that. So I said, yes. And we talked. I mean, he said he'd learned to fly as well and had won a military cross in Korea, which he may have done. And he said, you're quite different from what I expected. So I said, well, nobody ever meets me after reading the press and says, you're not as nice as I thought you were. So to cut a long story short, we had a long talk, and in the end he said, I've always been a Conservative, but I shall vote for you. Well, this went round the pub, and everybody knew the Colonel. And so that did a pile of good.
The 9 o'clock news and campaign report with Michael Burke and Jill Dando.
Good evening. With most of the opinion polls pointing towards the possibility of a hung parliament, all three major parties have focused on reform of the voting system. John Major firmly ruled out proportional representation.
Friday, April the 3rd, my 67th birthday. I can't make this campaign out. A total puzzle. Such a gap between the top and the bottom. Obviously, strong Labour support and more window bills out than I've ever seen. But I really am too old to worry now. I mean, in 1983, when I was 57, to be thrown out as I was could have been the end. But now it would just be quite natural to be defeated at 67. I'm doing any questions on Friday, and when it's all over, I can really speak my mind about it. I've never known a campaign where there's so little real exchange between the electors and the people, and all this wretched pollster stuff, which I cannot abide. I don't know. I feel free now from the whole damn thing. Alienated first from the cabinet, then the shadow cabinet, then the parliamentary party, then the national executive, then the conference, then from parliament, and I feel that I must be free now to represent people's interests and make speeches about them. These are rambling thoughts, and it's now 25 to 1.
This is Brian Redhead with Election 92, the election night results programme here on Radio 4. It's 10 o'clock on Thursday, April the 9th. The polls are closed, but even before the first declaration, a BBC exit poll is suggesting a dramatic outcome to the general election, with the likelihood of a hung parliament. The forecast indicates that the two...
But about 1:40 we had the declaration, and I won. But there'd been a massive shift of about nearly 4,000 between Tories who voted Liberal to get rid of me, so my majority actually fell. I made my speech, and then little radio interviews, and then Carol and I went back to the club, and I spoke in the club, and they gave me a clap, but it was very depressing because of the Tory government, and they were red-eyed, really, at the thought of 4 or 5 more years of the Tories. I went upstairs, and Tom and Margaret were there, and I thanked them, and it's all over, and I'm frightfully tired.
And the prediction is now that the Conservatives may even have a majority. Majority of 1 is our current prediction on the basis of this. It's been shifting their way all through the evening as the results have come in a very uneven pattern.
It's 6 o'clock on Friday, the 10th of April. Good morning. This is Today with Sue McGregor and John Humphreys. The headlines this morning. Flying in the face of the opinion polls, the Conservatives have won the general election and are set to win an overall majority of about 17 seats. It means a 4th consecutive term in office for the Tories, a feat not achieved since Lord Liverpool did it in 1822.
The defeat was devastating. And truthfully, if I had been defeated, I would have been very dejected. I was very tired, as you always are at the end of a campaign. And the following night, I'd agreed to go on any questions, and I tried to do what I could to boost morale. But it was our 4th defeat, and obviously everybody's mind was turning then, as mine was, to how we could protect people in the years that lay ahead.
Sunday, April the 12th. I spoke to Steve on the phone, who said that Neil Kinnock had seen him last night, and he said Tony was bloody marvellous on any questions, so that was a good sign. I rang Neil's home and spoke to his daughter Rachel and said, Neil was out to a meal. So I said, will you tell your dad I was thinking of him very much, thank him for all he did, and I know what this tabloid stuff can do. And she said, well, he'll appreciate that very much. The only thing you would say is that Major's not going to have an easy run, and all this triumphalism at the moment is absolutely misplaced. I don't want office or cash or a peerage, which I think I've often said in my diary, but I do want to stabilise the party and save it from all this attack to abandon and join the Liberals and have PR and so on, give people feeling there is a job to be performed. And I think that we're going to have terribly troubled times. I mean, who's going to keep law and order if there's 20% unemployment in Britain and so on and so on? So there's a job of work to be done, and a job of work uninfluenced in any way by any desire for promotion. I'll stand for the shadow cabinet, but I hope to God I don't get in, because otherwise I'd be totally silenced. I had thought I wouldn't stand for the executive, but in Chesterfield they said don't run away, and by the autumn I think we might see a new situation. Apparently not only Neil is going, but Hattersley is going, and Smith and Beckett is ones that are candidates, John Prescott for the deputy leadership, Brian Gould for the leadership, Gordon Brown possibly. I think on the whole I'd prefer a right-winger who had to work with the left than a so-called left-winger who had to improve his responsibility by swinging to the right. So, I mean, that's my feeling about it at the moment. That's the news on Sunday the 12th of April 1992.